West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Neil, let's begin with what's going on here legally. The companies get a request to preserve information that we know they preserve anyway. What is going on here legally?
Well, I think what's going on here, I think I have one question for Kevin McCarthy, which is, why are you so scared, Congressman? Because nobody thinks Kevin McCarthy is right legally. It's preposterous, and he can try and make these statements or fight it in court, but he's gonna lose. Now, it's true the law recognizes attorney-client privilege, but it doesn't recognize a legislator-conspirator privilege. And this is a really silly but dangerous threat. I mean, Kevin McCarthy can't tell you what law is being violated. He can't cite to one. And yet he's threatening retaliation against third parties, these companies like social media companies, phone companies, and the like. And what is he threatening for? Just merely complying with a subpoena, a lawful subpoena. That's a mob boss tactic, to basically go after and threaten someone who complies with the subpoena. And it just shows that this party has lost any pretense of being a law and order party. This is an anti-law party, an anti-democracy party at this point.
So, John Hyman, we have at least now one campaign agenda item for the Republicans in the congressional election, and that is elect us so we can pass laws, I guess, to penalize telecommunications companies that cooperate with federal investigations.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. That's one thing, Lawrence. I think there's also, this is like a lot of McCarthy threats. This is a threat that seems to be directed in not just at the companies, but also kind of issuing a threat in a somewhat more veiled way towards all the Democrats who are pressing for these phone records. He seems to, this is like another one of these threats where Republicans are basically saying, hey, you know what? We might be back in the majority relatively soon. You guys should probably be careful what you do here, because if you leave a fish's head in our bed, we're going to put a horse's head in your bed. It is, as Neil said, it's mob behavior, not the behavior of people who care about the Constitution or care about the law or care about getting to the bottom of what happened on January 6th, which of course is what this is all about, right? And the truth is that McCarthy is not on the list right now. A lot of people want to know what Kevin McCarthy did on January 6th and the communications that he had with Donald Trump. He's not one of the congressmen currently listed. And I think that's another thing that's going on here, which is McCarthy wants to keep his own name off that list and wants to make sure that the Democrats who are running this committee know that he is, or think at least, that he is going to rain down hell on their heads if they drag him into this. And I think, again, that gets back to the top, what Neil said. What is Kevin McCarthy so scared of? If he did nothing wrong, shouldn't be afraid to be called and shouldn't be afraid to have people look at his phone records.
Well, Neil, one reason why Kevin McCarthy might not be on the list so far is that his conversations with the president are a matter of public record already to some degree, and he has described those conversations to other people who could be called as witnesses to say what he said about those conversations.
Exactly, and that puts him in a different position than, for example, Jim Jordan, who, as you were saying earlier, kind of disassembled about his January 6th conversations. And the reporting today suggests there were many conversations between Jordan and Trump on January 6th. Now, that itself shouldn't surprise us. I mean, what else do these guys have to do besides plan an insurrection? It's not like they were doing their jobs or anything. And meanwhile, Matt Gaetz, who's also a subject of the new reporting, saying that he had these conversations with Trump, I think he's just excited that he's making headlines for something beyond being in a federal sex trafficking investigation. But the bottom line is that, these conversations look like they happen. I think Congress is absolutely right to say, preserve the records. We can't trust these people not to try and delete them. And so that's why they've issued this lawful order to the telephone companies. It's absolutely a by-the-book thing to do in an investigation, and there's zero that's unlawful about it.
And John Heilemann, all we're going to get here in the end is a record of a phone call having happened. We aren't going to get the contents of the phone call. We're not going to get the words they said. And so it's going to be up to Jim Jordan to say or not say what was said on that phone call. And the chances of that being accurate are exactly zero.
Well, that's right. Obviously, Lawrence, although, I think I want to just say so far, this committee has done everything, as far as I can tell. They've done everything that I would have wanted them to do, and everything that they've done has been right. They have been so far playing hardball. We'll see how long that continues, because I do think that what we want, if we want to get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th, is we want Kevin McCarthy to have to testify. We definitely want Jim Jordan to have to testify, because as Neil again just suggested, he's already lied. He's already basically acknowledged this week that he lied previously about the phone call, about the number of the phone calls he had with Trump. We know that Jim Jordan is a person of interest, so to speak, in this investigation for things that we know he said and did on that day, for his involvement in encouraging the Stop the Steal protest, and for the fact that, we all know Jim Jordan suddenly got a nice little Medal of Honor from Donald Trump before Trump left office. We all wonder what that's about too. So I think these guys all need to be hauled up before this committee. They all need to testify under oath. They all need to be, if they won't come, they need to be subpoenaed. And so far I'm encouraged by this committee's toughness. I think there's no way we're ever going to get to the bottom of what happened unless all of these folks have to testify under oath and under threat of punishment if they refuse to testify. And we got to try to force them to testify as honestly as we can. I know you're skeptical and I'm skeptical. They're going to tell the truth, but the only possibility of getting anywhere close to the truth is to make sure that we get to hear their testimony.
So, Neil, if these members of Congress are subpoenaed to testify to the committee, which is the only way they'd show up to testify, they will presumably fight that in court. How much time will get eaten up that way?
I mean, that's the old Trump tactic, and they could try and stall and delay it. But I do think that this is a law enforcement investigation for reasons to move quickly. And that's my one quibble with my friend John. I think the committee's done everything right, but it's taken a while. I mean, we're 8 months after January 6th, or close to it. And we don't have answers to a lot of basic questions. And there's a narrative being formed now by the Republican Party that January 6th was no big deal. And I can't imagine a more dangerous, frankly, big lie than that. This was a threat, a massive threat to our democracy and everything we stand for. And we need to know what happened, why it happened, and who was behind it.
It is Wednesday, the 1st of September of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict. Wednesdays will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests. And, how about these Christo-fascists sitting on the Supreme Court? And I'm looking at you, Amy. But we don't want to leave it just to old Amy there. Oh, no. We've got some long-sitting jurists there who finally get to be the activist judges they always decried. Yeah, you knew that they projected. Whenever you heard a right-winger talked about an activist judge, it was because when they were working in their star chambers, they knew exactly what and who they were eliminating. Okay, so everything in the movies is coming true. Well, the bad parts. I hope Mr. White Knight comes in over the horizon, because we're going to need it. And anybody who is even close to, I don't know, a good man or gal is brought down. Oh my God, our media. They just cannot stop attacking Joe. I had to turn off MSNBC. There's certain blocks that it's unwatchable. Just like, for instance, Joe's speech yesterday. I looked at it and I will admit I am of the Democratic Party persuasion, aren't we all? But I'm not a psycho fan. Give me a break. I thought it was a rather historic speech, considering the content and the reason for the speech. Yet on certain blocks, on even MSNBC, they were talking about he was so defensive. It's like he's holding a grudge. Why? Everybody else thought, wow, this guy's empathetic. Something that hasn't been reported on in Washington for quite some time, and apparently they're still not going to. And if they do, it's going to be, what's wrong with that guy? What is he hiding? All right. I made a small little aside on social media, and you know where I do that. Everywhere. No, but particularly on Twitter, specifically, actually. And I had surmised that, maybe for certain types of people in the media and in government, and probably even out there in the general population, war is a hard thing to give up. I mean, apparently giving up war and getting off of it, getting rid of that addiction, is even more profound than trying to quit smoking or heroin. Maybe heroin. Though I've heard quitting smoking and quitting heroin pretty much rank up there with no one wants to have to go through that when they have to actually do it. And apparently war is like that too. No one really wants to give it up when you feel what the Joneses are going to be like afterwards. I don't know. I keep saying, you still got a proxy war. It's like methadone. If you just look at it that way, you can still get, your armaments previewed. I mean, isn't that what Afghanistan was for 20 years? I mean, really just a way to showcase weaponry so you can sell it around the world so people can, saber rattle and call themselves secure. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to find another marketing device, or at least somewhere else. And that's why you have proxy wars. Come on. Got to go back to the old style. Well, I don't know. Maybe we don't, because Vietnam was supposedly a proxy war, though we were heavily involved, and so was the Chinese and Soviet Russia, of all people. Jeez. All right. Well, we went into our little folly in Afghanistan for 20 years, and of course the Democratic president left holding the bag is going to be blamed for being so defensive, so surly. I didn't see it. Surly? I don't know, but that's what I was hearing, even on MSNBC of all places. Certain blocks, not all. All right, well, we have fires ringing us right now again. At least it smells that way. Smoke has roiled in to our little area. And, so what are you going to do? You close up and breathe filtered air. That's what you got to do, if you can. And for those that can't, this is not good. You don't need me to tell you that, but hey. So apparently over 200 people showed up in downtown Grants Pass to protest. I don't know, to say we want the pandemic to win. They're protesting COVID restrictions and mask mandates and anything that they consider to be impinging upon their freedom. And mostly everything impinges upon their freedom if it occurs or if it originates somewhere outside of their little freedom hood. And when I say hood, I'm talking about homeboys and gals. Yeah, boy. Talk about tribal. If only. I think that they've manifested like a cancer across our body politic. They've masticized. We might be in big trouble. Proud Boys taking over school boards? Proud Boys? Is that who you want teaching your kids? Of course not. That's why they're trying to collapse the public educational system by ramming through these right-wing neo-Nazis. Talking about 20 strong men coming in here and telling these little egghead wimps, you either follow the law of the gun or you're going to die. Wow. That's allowed? That guy wasn't arrested? Jeez. Is that where we've come to? Or some might rightfully say, well, that's what we're going back to. Like right after Reconstruction. When the South and the white people of the South just could not stand the idea that they might be under the yoke of a black man. You're not under the yoke of anybody. Come on, why are you looking at it like that? It's called fair exchange of goods and services. Come on. You know about that. You're a businessman, and that's exactly what they were upset about. Don't tell me it wasn't racial, okay? Because where I come from, business is business. No matter what color someone's hair is. Okay? Just saying. You want to talk about Star Trek little cartoon ideas about how to address race? Yeah, you got the blue-skinned people, and then you had the, I don't know, the half-white, half-black people. Maybe that was it. I can't remember. All I know is that the Riddler from Batman TV was there. Yeah, I know. Okay, well, what else is happening in the world? Everything. We have a giant storm that no one talks about. Ida totally displaced people in a way that Katrina did. Do we get to hear about that? No. And if we do, you know what it's going to be about. The black people and the brown people are looters, and the white people are survivors, and they're all carrying stuff out of the Safeway. Do they have Safeways there? Okay, I don't know. The Dinwiddie. Okay, well. You know, you have Hellman's on the East Coast. We have Best Foods. That's how we like it here in the West. Best Foods. Well, with that said, you know, once again, we do have a curated part of the show because it, you know, it grounds us. Well, the royal us, like the royal we. It grounds me, all right? If you want to know that truth. Anyway, let's get into the curated part because, as I said, it grounds me. At the top, of course, that was Lawrence breaking it down with the crew. Hi, Neil. About the January 6th committee clapping back on Kevin McCarthy's attempt to whitewash the insurrection. That's one way of putting it, too. And it's true. It's what he's doing, but a lot more. I would say he's furthering the insurrection. Not only whitewashing it, he's furthering it. But that's just me. I'm a romantic. On the rest of the menu, black U.S. farmers are still waiting for billions of dollars in promised debt relief, and I would suspect they're going to wait a little longer, because that's how they do it here. They, the royal they. A rural Oregon school superintendent was fired after enforcing the state mask mandate. The big criticism is that he was just following the rules, and they don't like that there. You're following the rules. What a commie. And the Biden administration aims to cut costs for solar and wind projects on public lands. Did anyone tell the fossil fuel industry about that? Huh? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the European Court of Human Rights ruled that Russia failed to conduct an effective investigation into the killing of a prominent human rights activist in Chechnya. And the unpopular Japanese prime minister denied he ever intended to dissolve the lower house of parliament in mid-September. Might still happen, but he never intended it. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of the chat room link, all the way across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page, and please send us money. Yes, we all. It's a constant plea, but we operate on a shoestring, so to speak. And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way, we are able to stretch those dollars and pay our bills and continue this powerhouse of resistance as God intended, or at least the founders originally intended so many years ago. So thank you for your generosity, and thank you for considering being generous in the future, because this is an ongoing struggle. And I don't know. Maybe that's how the founders originally intended it to be. But thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary, of course. It's a diary, not stories. I post that diary on Daily Goes about 10 minutes before showtime, and I really try. I try to get it posted on Twitter and other social media platforms. You know who they are. But you can always find it at Daily Goes. And, good luck trying to find it if you've never been there before. Even if you have. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Speaking of which, have you noticed, and maybe some of you noticed it when I mentioned it on that social media platform called Twitter, have you noticed that the leftist podcasters, like moi, who told people to get vaccinated, wash your hands, wear a mask, socially distance, are not dropping dead like flies? Why is that? It's almost like a conspiracy. You could almost say it is. People came into an agreement that maybe following the science was a good idea. If you want to call that a conspiracy. It achieved what we like to call in science pleasant results. Yeah. I don't know about we, but I do. Alrighty, I'm having fun. It's Wednesday. Okay, this first offering is out of the Associated Press by Roxana Heligman and Alan G. Breed. There was a time when black farms prospered, just 2 generations out of slavery. By 1910, black farms had amassed more than 16 million acres of land and made up about 14% of farmers. The fruit of their labors fed much of America. Now they have fewer than 4.7 million acres. Black farms in the U.S. plummeted from 900 and 2,500,000 to fewer than 36,000, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's latest farm census. and only about 1 in 100 farms is black. What happened? They were able to overcome the promise of 40 acres and a mule to the newly freed slaves, a military order later rescinded. But over the last century, they faced one obstacle after another because of their race. Farmers needed loans to expand, to buy seed, to bridge the time between harvests. But lenders, chief among them the USDA, often refused to give them money and often rushed to foreclose. Suppliers and customers undercut them. Laws of inheritance led to the breakup of homesteads. Now the government wants to make amends by providing billions of dollars in debt forgiveness for farmers of color as part of the pandemic relief package. But a judge has put the money on hold in the face of lawsuits filed by, wait for it, white farmers claiming that the program is unfair. It's reverse discrimination. We've been kicking these people forever, and we want to continue kicking them. You're taking away our rights to kick people if you give them what they're due. Okay, I guess that's the law that they're going to try to apply. Today's black farms and descendants of black farmers who struggled and lost their stakes argue that they are the ones who have been the victims of injustice. Of course, if you teach that in schools, it's critical race theory, because then people would have to pay. The Virginia farmer who barely was able to keep part of his farm when the USDA threatened to sell it at auction. The Kansas man who lost the land his grandparents once homesteaded. The Arkansas farmer who is holding on by a thread, praying the federal aid will come through in time. It was racism, says farmer John Wesley Boyd Jr., and it still is. I think discrimination is still pervasive. I think that it's done in a much subtler way, Boyd says. I don't think you're going to see many USDA officials spitting on people now or maybe calling them colored, but they are not lending them any money the way they lend to white farmers. Liliana Frankel of the Malheur Enterprise, by way of the Oregonian, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Kevin Purnell was fired on Monday as superintendent of the Adrian School District just 1 week after students returned to school. The Adrian School Board, convening in an emotionally charged special meeting, voted 4-1 Monday evening to terminate Purnell after meeting in an executive session for less than half an hour to consider the matter. The board provided no public explanation for its surprise decision to oust the superintendent, who's been on the job for 3 years and in the district for 14. But critics and supporters of Purnell's stance on mask mandates made it clear that was the pivotal issue in his fissure with the board. Board Chair Eddie Kincaid said after the meeting that the decision was because of Purnell's failure to follow board directives. He declined to elaborate. Kincaid and board members Bobby Davis, Ryan Martin, and Quentin Shank voted for the motion to terminate Purnell, while Eric White opposed it. They took the vote without comment. After the board emerged from executive session and held the vote, Purnell gave an emotional speech to an emotional crowd. He said that he had, at times, failed to communicate well, and that board members had at times failed to communicate in a civil manner. Unfortunately, I feel that I've lost my way and it began to consume me, Purnell said. I've become tired of disappointing myself, my family, my friends, my colleagues. The conflicts Kincaid and Purnell alluded to emerged amid rising COVID-19 cases in Malheur County and continued opposition to government-mandated mask-wearing in Adrian. I should add that the opposition to anything government in that part of the state is, well, I don't know, part of the DNA of white utopia Oregon, as it was originally intended by its founder. One wonders. Nicola Groom and Valerie Volkovici of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration plans to make federal lands cheaper to access for solar and wind power developers after the clean power industry argued in a lobbying push this year that lease rates and fees are too high to draw investment and could torpedo the president's climate change agenda. Washington's decision to review the federal land policy for renewable power projects as part of a broader effort by President Joe Biden's government to fight global warming by boosting clean energy development and discouraging drilling and coal mining. We recognize the world has changed since the last time we looked at this, and updates need to be made. Jania Scott, senior counselor to the U.S. Interior Department's Assistant Secretary for Land and Minerals, told Reuters. On Tuesday, the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, announced it has initiated a process to revise regulations related to renewable energy permitting and rights of way on public lands, starting with 4 public listening sessions in September and a separate consultation with Native American tribes. The session will focus on rent lease schedules and fees for wind and solar rights of way, application processing times, and environmental justice considerations. The push for easier access to vast federal lands also underscores the renewable energy industry's voracious need for new acreage. Biden has a goal to decarbonize the power sector by 2035, a target that would require an area bigger than the Netherlands for the solar industry alone, according to research firm Rystad Energy. Rystad. At issue is a rental rate and fee scheme for federal solar and wind leases designed to keep rates in line with nearby agricultural land values. Under that policy, implemented by President Barack Obama's administration in 2016, some major solar projects pay $971 per acre per year in rent, along with over $2,000 annually per megawatt of power capacity. For a utility-scale project covering 3,000 acres and producing 250 megawatts of power, that is roughly a $3.5 million tab each year. Wind project rents are generally lower, but the capacity fee is higher at $3,800 according to the federal fee schedule. The renewable energy industry argues the changes imposed by the Interior Department are out of sync with private land rents, which can be below $100 per acre, and do not come with fees for power produced. Well, let's go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, will you want to remember? No one can accuse Hugh Jackman of shying away from challenging roles. Between musicals and Marvel, he's done picks like The Prestige and The Fountain. In his latest, Reminiscence, the question is whether the challenge results from the demands of the character or the way the project was conceived and executed. It's the directorial debut of Lisa Joy, best known for her work on Westworld, with production help from Jonathan Nolan, brother of Christopher. Reminiscence is ambitious. Part neo-noir thriller, part post-apocalyptic sci-fi, part crime procedural, and part psychological romance. The story concerns ex-soldier Nick, Jackman's character, and his also veteran sidekick Emily, Thandie Newton, who operate a business in an overheated, flooded Miami, helping clients relive memories. They have drugs, an immersion tank, and a hollow projector to assist in the effort. One night after closing, May, Rebecca Ferguson, walks in for a session, supposedly to find lost keys. Nick falls for her big time, much to the chagrin of Emily, who, despite her misgivings, sidekicks her way through the story, which starts in earnest after May suddenly vanishes. What this one has in the way of a cool idea, wonderful set design and cinematography, it loses in the lack of character development and heavy-handed narration. Both these issues are due to the sprawling nature of the narrative. We get hints of characters with interesting backstories, but too much is going on too fast to delve into them. The narration is an ill-conceived way to guide the thing through to its too many endpoints. As a concept and cautionary tale, there are reasons to watch this one. Had Joy stuck with the format with which she's familiar, the multi-episode series, Reminiscence could have been truly killer. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
I'm Doolin too, and this is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. Hurricane Ida slammed into the Louisiana coast on Sunday. By landfall, it was a Category 4 storm. 150-mile-an-hour winds brought down trees, power lines, even whole buildings. Over 1 million people have lost power in the state, and at least one person has died. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and just 2 weeks ago, I was in the same place where Ida came ashore. I was working on another film for Scientific American, this one about Louisiana's attempts to save its coastline after decades of erosion. Ida is just another massive blow to a state that still loses a football field of coastline every hour. During my reporting, I had met Teresa and Donald Dardar, a couple in their 60s from the Pointe-au-Champ's Native American tribe. Their community lives right along the Gulf Coast and has seen over 90% of their land lost to erosion over the past several decades. But unlike many in the area, the couple never moved.
Sure, we could build a house, buy a house somewhere else, but it would never be the same. This is the roots. This, just like a plant, you deroot a plant and you leave it in the sun, it's going to die.
That was Teresa speaking to me in my first film about coastal erosion in Louisiana. At the time, she and her husband Donald had no plans to leave their home, no matter how threatening the waters or winds got. But this weekend, with Ida bearing down, mandatory evacuations were called. Teresa and Donald loaded up their car with their 2 dogs and headed to Texarkana, Texas, a 6-hour drive away. This was the only place they could find a hotel. They had to leave most of their possessions, including Donald's 5-year-old horse, Pretty Girl, back on the levee. I've been calling and texting with Teresa throughout the weekend. We've been sharing what little information we have about her home and community. This was my most recent call to her.
Hello.
Hi, Teresa. It's Duke.
Hi.
Is this still a good time for you?
Yeah, I'm good.
So how's any new news since we last talked?
Bad news. Like trees down, poles snapping, and we heard that homes were lost, and we heard that Donald's uncle lost his home. We heard that it looks like a war zone because there's so much damage, so much devastation in the community. And then we didn't think that there was water because, like Donald said, well, this was the big one. And then he said, well, no, not really, because we didn't get water. But now we know that we did get water because Kezia and the sheriff were not able to go any further than the Pointe-aux-Trembles supermarket because of the water.
Teresa has been getting updates from her relatives who stayed behind, when their cell phones work. Most news outlets have focused on the larger cities. Text and Facebook posts have been her only news from Pointe-aux-Trembles.
Usually we get no publicity, it's always the big city of New Orleans. The news about our community, a lot of people don't even know that our community exists or that our tribes even exist.
So do you think this is the big one? You and I have talked about this, and Donald and I have talked about this. We keep on talking about, the coast eroding and the dangers of that. Was this the big one that that you've been worried about for a while, or, your community's been worried about?
Hope it was the big one, that we don't get anything bigger because, I don't know what we have left. But if it's not the big one, I would hate to see what the big one's going to look like. And right now we have no running water, no gas, and no electricity.
And do you have any word when that might come back?
We have no idea. We have a propane little gas stove that we use in the boat. We can cook on that, but we'll have to buy water, to bathe in, and we'll have to use the bayou water to flush the toilet. My prayer is that we have a home to go home to, and that that everybody has a home to go to. I know it may not be the case, that everything is in God's hand, and that's what I have to do. I have to let go and let God, because I can't control it,
A few hours after we talked, Teresa texted me some good news. A cousin had checked on her house and it was still standing. A lot of damage, but still standing. And Donald's horse has survived the storm. Teresa and Donald plan to drive the 6 hours back home today to begin cleanup. But the roads leading up to their house are still flooded and unpassable. She says they'll figure things out when they get there. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Doolin Tu.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with flood water, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Corporate bosses across America have been sputtering in outrage at you working stiffs this summer, spewing expletives about the fact that while the U.S. economy has been coming back, you haven't. Labor shortage, they squeal, lazily accusing the workforce of mass laziness. They charge insultingly that millions of workers got used to laying around during the pandemic, noting that there is now an abundance of jobs open for everything from restaurant workers to nurses. The bosses and their political dogs bark that you people need to get back in the old harness and start pulling again. Adding a nasty bite to their bark, several GOP governors cut off unemployment benefits to people, hoping to force them to work. Other businesses have proffered signing bonuses, free dinner coupons, and other lures, while such notoriously mingy outfits as McDonald's and Walmart have even upped their wage scale in an effort to draw workers. Yet, no go. In fact, to the astonishment of the economic elite, the employment flow this year is going the other way. Record numbers of current workers in all sorts of jobs in every section of the country are voluntarily walking away. There's even an official economic measurement of this phenomena called the quits rate, and it is surging beyond anything our economy has experienced in modern history. In April, 4 million workers quit. In May, another 3.6 million left, and in June, 3.9 million said adios. The quits are so unexpected and so widespread that pundits have started dubbing this year the Great Resignation. This is Jim Hightower saying, what's wrong with people? Why are such staggering numbers of Americans failing to do their jobs? But wait, maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the corporate system's jobs are failing the people. Consider this. The most common comment by those who are walking out is, I hate my job. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by our new Lowdown Happy Hour, now live streaming on Facebook from the Chat and Chew Cafe, with kick-ass political spark plugs like Beto O'Rourke, musical champions like Marcia Ball, and grassroots change makers like the New Georgia Project and People's Action. The Lowdown Happy Hour is reaching out to you to help put the move in movement. So grab a libation and join the fun. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day nearly 500,000 textile workers from Maine to Alabama walked off the job in a general strike. The United Textile Workers had launched an organizing campaign the year before. Within months, their membership had grown from 15,000 to well over 250,000. Working conditions and pay were abysmal. Normal work weeks averaged 55 hours. Child labor was widespread, and workers were always in fear of mill closings, pay cuts, and firings for suspected union activity. In the South, the industry had essentially been in a depression since the early 20s. The key issue was the stretch out. Workers were routinely expected to complete an increasing amount of work at the same rate and wage. For a brief moment, workers hoped their conditions would change when President Roosevelt signed the Code of Fair Competition the previous summer. It raised wages, limited hours, and prohibited child labor. It also allowed for union organizing. But the mill owners maneuvered around the code effectively, and the Textile Relations Board refused most workers' complaints. Fed up, workers walked out of the mill by the hundreds of thousands. They used the flying squadron tactic employed by Minneapolis Teamsters earlier that year, traveling from town to town, from mill to mill, calling workers out on strike. Mill owners were shocked. Within days, strikers confronted thousands of police and scabs. More than 40,000 National Guardsmen were called out in 16 states. Over the course of the strike, 16 people would be killed and hundreds more injured. After 22 days, union leaders called off the strike when President Roosevelt promised a government survey of industry conditions. It was an outrage, a betrayal, and a defeat felt for decades. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the low 80s, partly cloudy currently, and our temperature should at that 80 to 83 should be about the same as yesterday. Some clouds this morning will generally give way to generally sunny skies for the afternoon. Winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the upper 40s. Winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10. And a mainly sunny sky tomorrow with highs in the mid-80s. Winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to spike. We have now confirmed cases of 183,039 people, and our deceased have increased by 4, and we now stand at 206 confirmed dead from the virus. Grass pollen, and actually pollen itself is rated as none outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 83 parts per million, still unhealthy for those who have breathing problems and really anybody in the area because of the fire smoke. Stay inside, breathe filtered air. The daytime UV index is high at 7. Barometric pressure is, it's rising at 29.93 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 64 and cloudy. Paris is 73 and partly cloudy. Rome is 85 and sunny. Kyiv is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Kabul is 76 and clear. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 65 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and mostly cloudy with an air quality warning for wildfire smoke blowing in. And New York is 71 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy with a storm warning. And you know what that is. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Europe's top human rights court has ruled that Russian authorities failed to conduct an effective investigation into the killing of a prominent human rights activist in the Russian Republic of Chechnya. Tuesday's ruling yesterday by the European Court of Human Rights related to the July 15, 2009 murder of Natalia Estemirova, a leading rights defender in Chechnya who was abducted and later found dead with shots to the head and chest. The ECHR noted that Russian authorities promptly opened a probe into her killing and identified a suspect, but emphasized that Moscow's failure to provide full materials of the case made the court unable to conclude that the investigation had been carried out thoroughly. It noted some contradictions in the expert evidence had led it to doubt that the investigation had been effective. The court required Russia to pay the equivalent of $23,600 U.S. to Estemirova's sister and urged Russian authorities to track down and punish the perpetrators of her murder. Estemirova was a strong critic of Chechnya's regional leader Ramzan Kadyrov, who has relied on his feared security forces to enforce his rule and quash dissent in the region. International human rights groups have accused Chechen authorities of abductions, torture, and killings of their opponents.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Yoshifumi Takamoto and Sakura Murakami of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshida Suga told reporters that he had no plans to dissolve the country's lower house in the latest turn of a political drama as he fights to hold on to his job. Domestic media reported this week that he intended to dissolve the lower house of Parliament in mid-September and was considering holding the general election on the 17th of October. Suga's denial of these reports comes after several days of tense negotiations and sudden twists involving Suga and the most powerful politicians in the ruling camp as the unpopular prime minister maneuvers to stay in the top job. When asked whether Suga said, speaking of the severity of the coronavirus pandemic, that he cannot dissolve the lower house in this current situation. When asked whether that meant he would let members of the lower house of parliament serve their full terms, which ends on October 21st, Suga avoided a direct answer. Indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.